middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m., you know, felt something and thought I should go to the bathroom to check it out. And as I got out of bed, water everywhere. So I woke up my husband, told him, you know, what was happening. He ran to the bathroom to get me some towels and helped me out. And
helped her get to the bathroom to clean up and get ready. And I go back to the room and I'm like, this is happening. I get all my stuff on, I grab my bag, I'm totally dressed. I go back into the bathroom and wife's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm ready to go.
The plan was to stay home for as long as possible. So we just, you know, went back to bed, got his pajamas back on, went back to bed, and slept until morning. I texted Alicia in the middle of the night and said, hey, you know, this is what's happening and we'll talk in the morning. So we woke up and, you know, surges hadn't really, you know, very, very mild surges, nothing intense. So we just spent the morning trying to bring on, you know, more labor and enjoying ourselves and eating good food. We made a big breakfast and went for long walks, and you know, it was winter. We lit a fire and just watched movies, and it was a really wonderful day. So around, you know, one of the things we did to help, or I did to help bring on more intense surges, was that I had a masseuse come over and do an induction massage, which was amazing. She did about a 2-hour massage, and I just was laying there thinking how wonderful it was to not be in the hospital and to be in my home having a massage while I'm in labor.
With the fire going.
With the fire, I know, it's amazing. And sure enough, my surges really picked up afterward. I can't say for sure that it was the massage, but it definitely didn't hurt. So that was, you know, around 3 in the afternoon, so about 12 hours after my water's released. And I just kind of labored at home and listened to some of my gentle birth tracts and kept trying to eat food because I didn't know when the next time was that I'd be able to eat. And then as it got to be nighttime, I sent Nick to bed.
Which I was super grateful for. Alicia's advice of go to bed because you're gonna be up all night. I took it to heart.
Yeah. So that was a good time. I'm very introverted, so I actually really enjoyed just sitting on my ball, listening to the gentle birth, and just kind of going through each surge as it came. And I did that for 2 or 3 hours on my own.
Yeah.
Maybe more, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think you did for 3 hours.
Yeah. And then it finally got to be too much for me by myself. So I went and woke Nick up. You know, that was around midnight probably. And he kind of helped me through some more of the surges.
For about another hour. And then it clearly got past my point of competency. And where all of the things I learned kind of went out the window and weren't helping at all anymore. And then we're like, let's call Alicia.
Yeah. So Alicia came over, I don't know, like 1 or 2 a.m. and immediately she was so helpful. I thought Nick was really helpful, but she was amazing. You know, she came over, immediately just got to work, doing all sorts of things. She got me in the shower and that felt so good. She, you know, had the lighting, she had candles, she had my gentle birth tracts, and Nick got in the shower with me, and it was great. That felt so good. I have no idea how long I was in there, but it was a good place to be. I didn't want to get out until I started feeling like my body was pushing, and I thought, well, gosh, wait, I'll go backward. I just remember it being so hard. The surges were very, very intense, and it was my first baby, and I don't know if this changes at subsequent children, but I just remember thinking, I don't know how much harder this is going to get. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have to do this. How much energy do I have to conserve here? And I remember saying, this is hard. I can't do this. And Alicia said, Drew, you're almost there. This is as hard as it gets. And I think that was probably the most helpful thing at that moment that she could have said, to know that it's not going to get the surges aren't going to get more intense than this. And she knew from listening to me, I guess, how far along I was, and she was right. So shortly after that, I was in the shower, and my body felt like it was pushing, and I thought, oh my goodness, I think I need to get out of the shower. Yep. Now I think it's time to go.
Time to go.
Yeah, so got out of the shower, hurriedly got dressed, and
one of the things that Alicia and I did was we did like a little check just to see how far along. We didn't say anything, but we definitely could see our son's head starting to pop out. So that was like, oh, this is real. At this point, it's time to go.
They didn't need to say anything because I could feel what was going on. I knew that we needed to go to the hospital. But at the same time, it was hard because I was having very intense contractions that were close together, and it was hard to just like get some pants on and walk out to the car, but Alicia was amazing and was helping me, and thank you to Alicia for helping me get out the door there. So we get in the car, it's the middle of the night, and I can't sit down. So I am on all fours in the back seat of the car. Alicia is also in the back seat of the car. Also, the car seat is in the back seat of the car. So we were all pretty tight in there, and there was a lot of yelling on my part, and
it was an
wild.
Interesting drive.
It was wild. But I remember thinking, this is so much fun. I can't believe it's the middle of the night and we're driving to the hospital and I don't have a seatbelt on, and I'm having so much fun. So we get to the hospital, and again, can't sit down, so I'm kind of hanging over the back of the wheelchair to get up to labor and delivery.
On your knees, yeah.
On my knees, yeah.
And it was great because Alicia called ahead, told labor and delivery, hey, we're coming in, we're already pushing. So when we got there, they just ready for us. We went straight into delivery room, and we didn't have to fill out all their paperwork and do all those kind of things, because they were like, okay, it's go time.
Yep.
So we went straight in.
It's funny because one of our first meetings with Alicia, I told her, I really don't like hospitals. What I would love to happen is to stay home as long as possible and just go to the hospital to push the baby out, and just avoid all that time spent at the hospital where there's more potential for interventions and more getting poked and examined and whatnot. So I thought maybe if I got to the hospital and I was already pushing, they wouldn't have to do all those things for me.
And that's what happened.
So that's what happened. So we go in, Nick was in charge of talking to the doctor and the nurses about what the plan was, and it was, not to have an exam, a cervical exam, not to have an IV.
And that was interesting because the hospital that we had chose actually had a midwife program. However, that midwife was rather busy and was actually in the middle of another delivery, and so we had the traditional doctor who did not like or appreciate our plan, and came in, and luckily ahead of time, Alicia and some of our sessions had role played with me of like, okay, if somebody, if a doctor doesn't like your plan, how are you going to handle it? What are you going to do? And we actually played it out. So luckily we did that because this doctor was very adamant that we were very wrong. And so it turned into a very interesting conversation because the doctor said, no, we're not going to follow your plan. We're going to do it the way I want to do it. Luckily I was prepared. I said, no, we're not. This is, our health. This is what we're going to do. And so the doctor said, no, you're wrong. Why are you here at our hospital then if you're not going to follow our plan? And that kind of set me back. I'm like, oh, this doctor is very serious. I have to, really stick to this plan if I believe it. And so as, Alicia and I practiced and talked about, we didn't want to add more stress to the room. And so I asked the doctor to step outside in the hallway to have that conversation with me. And that turned into a very intense conversation, one that I actually was not expecting from the doctor. And the doctor again just reiterated, why are you at our hospital if you're not going to follow our practices? And so I tried to kind of diffuse the situation and say, hey, we believe that birth is a natural process. And until it becomes a medical process, we want it to be a natural process. And again, the doctor, said, hey, I have a fancy degree from a prestigious university in medicine. You don't. I've done 1,000 of these. You haven't. This is our plan. You're going to follow it. And so it was very intense. I was not expecting kind of that. And so it kind of became clear that this wasn't going to work with the doctor. And so I just asked the doctor, I said, okay, you know, if it becomes medically necessary for you to come back into the room, that'll be great. But at this time, you know, we'd like you to stay out. And so that was a pretty hard decision. So essentially, I kind of fired the doctor, which I wasn't expecting, especially since the midwife was busy. And so I stepped back into the room and I told Alicia that, and I was a little shaken because it's like, okay, I just fired our doctor. That's weird. And you know, Alicia was very, you know, affirming and said, hey, no big deal. You know, the nurse will be able to deliver. The midwife will come in time. Don't worry, it was the right decision. So that really kind of allowed me to kind of recenter and, you know, be at peace with that. Unfortunately, the midwife stepped in a couple minutes later and that doctor did not come back, which was great.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I am, you know, in the room. Nick actually stepped outside the room to have the conversation with the doctor, which was wonderful. Even though I heard kind of a tiny bit of what was going on, I just trusted that Nick knew what he was doing and had practiced and knew what to say, and I was able to just focus on my task and trust that he was going to take care of the situation. Specifically, the doctor was having a problem with the idea that I didn't want to have a cervical exam to see how far along I was. And I'm really glad I didn't have to.
Right.
Because at the point I was, I just don't even know. I know people do it, but I just don't even know how I would have sat still for an exam like that, even just for 30 seconds. So yeah, in the meantime, I'm kind of, again, on my knees, hanging over the back of the bed, you know, having pretty, you know, my surges are real close together, and Alicia said, hey, why don't you try standing up? So I got off the bed and stood up and kind of leaned over the side, and that's when I felt like, oh, the baby is going to come out. This is the right position to be in. So the midwife, like Nick said, the midwife came in. There were a few. One part of our birth plan was that the lights would be dim. So it was the middle of the night, so there was very little light in the room. It was pretty dark. And especially in the position that I was in, the midwife couldn't really see to deliver. So she was asking me to move or turn on the lights, get back in the bed. She also was having trouble when I was in the standing position because it just wasn't comfortable for her to, you know, see what was going on and catch the baby. So Alicia was awesome. She's like, why don't we get you a stool? So she grabbed a stool for the midwife and she said, this is great, this will work. But then there was still the light issue.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Long story, I'll try to make it short. But essentially, first date I took my wife on, we went hiking. Way back. Took her hiking, and we went up to like a water tower to look at the view, and I brought a headlamp, and my wife made fun of me, and she thought I was a nerd, and so it's kind of always been a running joke.
An endearing nerd.
An endearing nerd.
Yeah.
It was kind of always a running joke that Nick always has a headlamp. So we're at the hospital and the midwife can't see, and I go, hold on, I got something for you. So I run to my little hospital bag and I pull out my headlamp. And so I give it to the midwife. And the midwife ended up delivering our son using my headlamp. And so I felt very redemptive, full redemption on my headlamp nerdiness. And the best part was my wife didn't really know it was my headlamp until afterwards. And she's like, wait, our son was delivered with your headlamp? So I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah. So, so we were able to birth in the position that we wanted, and you know, push him out that way. One of the things we were interested in was having Nick catch our baby, but with the midwife felt like in the position that we were in, standing up, gravity was going to take over and he was going to come out pretty fast.
And he did.
And he did.
He did.
So that was actually a good call from the midwife for her to catch.
But she allowed me to kind of help guide him out, and assist in that way. But I felt pretty good about not doing the catch because he did come out pretty fast with gravity.
Yeah, maybe we'll practice for next time.
Yeah.
So it was great. I just remember the funny experience of kind of standing there and the baby's out and having to climb back in bed and kind of like step over the umbilical cord and try to maneuver myself back into the bed so that they could, you know, clean me up and I could hold the baby. And it was an amazing experience. You know, he was there, and he just starts breathing and crying and holding on to us and
Yeah.
eating, and it was wild. And Alicia was busy doing her thing, you know, feeding me. That was the other thing. They're feeding me and giving me drinks the whole time. It was wonderful. I think just that alone was so valuable, because I wouldn't have thought to eat or drink. Like, that was not something I could think about at all. And I don't know that you would have necessarily
No.
fed me as much as she did. So that was wonderful. I felt like I had, you know, was strong enough, certainly, during the whole process. I was tired. It was the middle of the night, but I felt strong. And I think that's because of all the snacks.
That's it. That's the story.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah.